Hi, welcome back to the Messy Life podcast. And in this episode today, it's going to be a mini episode, which I'm going to alternate now between the longer ones and these shorter reflection episodes, because I want to share something that I have been doing with you. And no surprises, I have been doing it messily. So this is about the podcast is all about creating flow and pleasure in your life. But what I have been doing imperfectly is journaling. I know there's lots of chat about journaling, and I hear from people all the time. They say, I would love to journal, but I don't have the time, or I put it off. I just keep not starting. And I think the reason why we do that, and I'm in that camp as well, it is something that I dip in and out of. And recently I was in this great flow where every night I was journaling, I was pulling myself an oracle card. And then a couple of weeks have gone by and I realized I hadn't done it anymore. Not anymore, I hadn't done it much. So I got back on track with it, and I'm loving it again. But here is something that I think lots of people do, because I know there are a lot of perfectionists out there who, like me, probably think, oh, I was going to journal as I got into bed tonight, but I actually bought a notepad for this and I can't find it, or like I need to have the right one, I don't have the right pen. And these kind of thoughts are such blockers to us just doing the thing. It's the same with anything. Like, it really doesn't matter what piece of paper you write on. It doesn't matter if your pen changes color halfway through. A journal is literally something to put your thoughts down on a page. And the likelihood is you won't even read back through it. So I made a kind of promise to myself a few months ago that I was not going to let things like that around, like the right book and this and that, stop me from just doing the thing. So I started, of course, as most of us do, like I started with this new journal that I had made, and I had stuck a few things into it, like around the moon phases and things, because that's something that I like to do. And recently I lost it, because I, lose things quite often. And that's not why I stopped actually this time, because a few times I have done it just like on the back of an envelope, and I always feel better having just done it. At the moment, I am using a lovely notebook that a friend gave me. And I've got a pile in the other room of notebooks that have got a few things in. And ordinarily, I think I would have just said, oh, well, that was something else. This was a different time. But it's quite fun, actually. Like, the things at the beginning of this notebook are from back when I was teaching hypnobirthing. I was running a pretty different business. And I actually read back through, there's not that much in there, but I read back through it. And some of it was even useful to me. A year down the line in a completely different space. So if that's you and you can relate to that, just use whatever is in front of you or is close to hand. The other thing I want to say is that you might be watching this, you might be listening to it, but another thing that I do is just speak things aloud. So if you are listening to this as a podcast and you are driving, for instance, what I do when I'm driving and listening to an audiobook or a podcast that gives prompts is just pause when a question is asked and I just speak it aloud. There is something really great about writing. Of course, I think the process of doing it is great, and sometimes stuff comes up and it's lovely to have a record that you can kind of look back at should you want to. But the process is also in the thinking, in the speaking aloud, and you can even record yourself. I mean, I don't know how easy that is to do while you're driving, but You could even record this as voice notes or just speak it. Or if you're not someone that talks to yourself constantly like me, you can just think it. But I'm going to guide you today on this mini reflection episode through some prompts. And they have all been inspired by a little affirmation card that from a pack called Moon Magic that a dear friend of mine gave me. And each day I have been pulling one of these cards and using the statement on there as inspiration for my journaling that day. I actually pull them in the morning in this room, which is my office and where I hold circles, and I take it up to bed at nighttime. So I'm in a process of not having my journal by my bed. I bring it up and down the stairs. But if I get to bed and I haven't done that, I'll either just come and get it, or I will just write on any piece of paper. I always have at least 3 notebooks at my bedside table. So I have something I can access. But this is the one that I drew yesterday. I accept and create more flow and pleasure in my life, which is so lovely. I accept and create more flow and pleasure in my life. So what I thought I would do is share with you some prompts that I came up with in response to that card. And once I've gone through those, I'm going to talk through some little examples of action steps, because if you have come to any of my workshops or seen my Instagram and things, you will know that while I love doing the reflection piece, the journaling, the searching, the thinking, for me, it is also really important that we are taking action towards change. And that's what we are going to be doing, or you are going to be doing, hopefully, as a result of listening to this. So let's focus. I thought it would be a good idea to kind of break that up into flow and pleasure, because, I mean, they could be 2 completely separate things, but we're doing them together for the sake of this card and today. So flow, you might know exactly what that means to you when I say flow. Or you might think, what does flow even mean in my day? And I think it means kind of, for me, and it doesn't have to be the same for you, but for me, it's like ease. You know, when you've just had, for instance, one of those mornings that have just gone smoothly and everybody's been in a good mood, and every time you've looked at the clock, there's been like spare time rather than less time than you need, and things have just flowed. And you might experience this for days at a time, or it might be like pockets of time. So listen to these prompts. I'm also going to share them in the show notes and the little information, because I'm going to share this on YouTube as well. And have a think about what comes up for you. You can pause to reply out loud or write down your journaling answers, or you can just think the answers. Or maybe you just want to let them swirl around your mind for now, and then you will come back to them later, which is wonderful as well. So the first question that I wrote was, which area or areas of your life already feel flowing and easeful? Which areas of your life already have flow? And you might be thinking of like places, or you might be thinking of times of day, or sort of, rather than specific timings, more like general pockets of time, like the morning routine on a school day, or maybe it's the weekend morning routine. And next up, what is an example of this flow that you've experienced in the last week? And just write down or speak out loud or think about the exact exactly what happened in that time. Next up, where is there space for more flow in my life? Where would you like to create more ease, more calm, more flow? And if your response to that is, ugh, everywhere, just pick one or two, because sustainable change is not about trying to change everything at once in your life. You can always come back to this. You can come back to these prompts in a week, a month, when you've made changes and you're feeling this flow is growing. The really wonderful thing often is that once we are intentional about one area of our life, other things start to change just on their own. It ripples out. And this one or two, actually, I think one example that you've chosen where there's space for more flow, I want you to write down, what would that look like? And if you feel called to, you can actually write it down in a kind of like a present tense account. So I wake up in the morning before my children and just take a few moments to myself to stretch and come into the day, land in the day. I go downstairs and make myself a cup of tea. So we are in the present tense, and you are writing out exactly what you want to be your reality. So yeah, that might be something that you record and save it. Change the name so it's not just new audio 73 or something in your phone like my phone is full of. But like change it to, I don't know, flowing morning or flowing work morning. And the last question for this focus on flow is, what tiny step towards this reality can I take today? What tiny step towards this reality can I take today? And if you are answering these questions just before bed, just do it tomorrow. So moving on to pleasure. We don't need another word for that example. We all know what pleasure feels like. That's not to say it's the same for everybody, but you know what feels pleasurable to you. So I want you to start off by writing down or speaking aloud a little bit about a moment of pleasure that you have experienced in the last couple of days or week. Something that brought you just sheer pleasure. It might have been an hour, it might have been 5 minutes, it might have been 20 seconds. Let's write that down and say it aloud. And next up, which places or times of day feel the most pleasurable? And you can write down as many as you want here. There's no, when we're talking about something that's already good, there's no cap on how many. So is it the whole time you're at work? Or is it like Thursdays when you go into the office and you love being there? Is it the Friday morning coffees you go for that you love? You know, where in your life already feels the most pleasurable? And now, where would you like more pleasure? Where in your life do you want to call in more pleasure for yourself? And again, my suggestion is to focus on one, and you can always come back. But pleasure, it spreads and grows and ripples out, so you may not even need to. And lastly, how can you inject some more pleasure into your life tomorrow? And the reason I'm saying tomorrow rather than like in general is because it has to, this step, that question is like the next tiny action step, the next smallest step. And you have to be able to do it tomorrow. So, you know, if it's like, I want to, I don't know, book a holiday to the Caribbean, great, but that might bring you pleasure tomorrow if you do the booking, but likely it's like delayed. But also that's probably, I don't know about your circumstances, but that's probably not achievable tomorrow. And I'm not saying we're creating in a day or in a moment, in a journaling answer, this huge change. If you could just create this moment of pleasure for yourself tomorrow, how are you going to do that? And if you just asked yourself that question every night before bed, this is not another question, but you can just imagine this. If you did that every single night before bed for a week, imagine how different you'd feel. We're not even changing that much necessarily. At this point, we're not taking anything away. We are adding in more pleasure, more joy. So, if you felt any kind of resistance or stuckness to the last two questions, how are you doing it today, or how are you doing it tomorrow, creating more flow, more pleasure, I wanted to just share a few examples of the things that I wrote down when I did this last night, and they might be similar to what you've been thinking of. They might be completely different, but hopefully they will give you some ideas. So today, the day that I'm recording this, is the day that my daughter goes to after school club. And usually I pick her up and we both drive straight to nursery to collect my son. And I made like packed tea for her and she eats that in the car. It's not great. It's not the most lovely experience for her. I suspect, or I know because she tells me. She would rather just come straight home, but I don't want to collect him too late. So I decided last night that today I was going to park my car near her school and pick her up just a touch earlier, 10 minutes earlier, and then we will go to the park together. She can eat there, she can play a little bit. We'll have that little moment of connection before we go and get my youngest, my son, from nursery. And that kind of ticked both boxes for me. That felt like I would get pleasure from doing it. And I also, I'm not going to lie, like I get some kind of internal pleasure, like feeling like I'm a better mother for doing that. That's nonsense. Of course, I am a good mum, even when I'm ferrying her into the car and driving off to nursery. But when I'm being intentional, when I'm creating these moments for us, for our relationship, that feeds something that feels good for me. The other thought that I had, and I was in bed writing this last night, so I didn't do it for today. But I'm going to do it tonight for tomorrow. It is really warm here. It is definitely iced coffee season, and I love an iced coffee. But if you make coffee, maybe people have fancy machines and they can do this without this happening to them. But if I make coffee and then I just add ice to it, then the coffee's too watery. I'm sure the answer is to put less water in initially, isn't it? I'm just thinking this through now. But what I thought I could do is just make a pot of coffee before bed as normal, leave it to cool, and then pop it in the fridge for the morning. And then I can just pour myself some coffee in the morning and add ice and enjoy that. And that would give me a moment of pleasure that feels good. And it's easy to do within my day. The other thought I had, not for myself, but I thought a way that we can kind of create more pleasure is just spending an extra 5 minutes making a really delicious packed lunch, or lunch if you work from home like I do. So just taking the time. Often I go and throw together a very quick sandwich for lunch and eat it here at my desk, and just taking half an hour for my lunch, actually enjoying it, maybe reading my book or sitting in the sun, not scrolling on my phone. That for me would create more pleasure. Flow, another flow example will just be making sure that I have everything ready. I say I do this with my husband. We have everything ready for the next day for school and nursery, etc. All the bags packed and ready. Maybe you already do this, or maybe like me, you don't, even though you think about doing it. But something about writing it down, saying, okay, I'm going to do this, is great, because it actually makes us more kind of accountable, more likely to do it. I have just given you 4 different examples. The first 2 were what I chose last night for my flow and my pleasure. I'm not saying, okay, here's 30 things you can do. I don't want you to write a list of 10 things even you can do, even 5 things, because it's too many. It's just too much, it's overwhelming, and you're far less likely to do it. Just choose one and try and do that for a week. You might find after 3 days, you're I'm going to add in something else. And what I love about these prompts is you can keep coming back to them. You can keep revisiting them. If you take a screenshot or write down the questions, you can come back to them at any point. I'm going to be sharing over the weeks and months ahead. I'm going to be sharing a new set of prompts every couple of weeks, but you can dip into them as and when you want, but you can also just come back to using the same ones. With any kind of self-reflection like this, like journaling, you don't have to reinvent the wheel every week, every month with brand new ideas of what to respond to. It can be so simple. And if you just want one thing that you're going to write down before bed, add that you can remember without having to check a list. How am I going to create more flow and or pleasure in my day tomorrow or today, if you're doing journaling in the morning? So that's it. I hope you enjoyed this. As I said, I'm going to keep coming back with these little reflection episodes. If you have any feedback or revelations from them, I would love to hear about it. You can message me on Instagram over at Tori Louise Coaching, and I am the same handle kind of everywhere: Facebook, YouTube, everywhere. So yeah, thanks so much, and catch you next time.